Let's take a look at the NBA's single-season rebounding leaders of the 1970s. We'll start with the one-time leaders: Wes Unseld, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Walton, and Moses Malone. Then there's Elvin Hayes, a two-time rebounding champ. And finally, Wilt Chamberlain, a three-time league leader. Not a bad list considering all 6 of these players are Hall of Famers. But hold up, we're missing a year. So who led the NBA in rebounding in 1978? That would be Truck Robinson, an undersized rebounding machine. What Robinson lacked in height, he made up for in strength, boxing out whoever he had to get that rebound. Yet he was much more than a rugged board man. Robinson was a master of the bank shot with an automatic mid-range game.
The soft touch, right off the glass. One of the best bank shooters in basketball, and in particular, I make that remark because he's 6'7", and that's a rarity in this game.
But you don't get the nickname Truck for your shooting touch. Every drive to the hoop was done with aggression. Truck Robinson made sure every defender felt him.
He'll make that move a lot. Truck, of course, uses that big frame. He's like an 18-wheeler in there. If he puts that body into you, he's going to move people out.
One of the most reliable offensive producers in the NBA, Truck Robinson broke out with the New Orleans Jazz in 1978 before becoming one of the best Phoenix Suns in their early franchise history. His game was predicated on rebounding and hard work. Exciting? No. Effective? Yes. And Truck Robinson was very effective for a decade. Let's jog your memory. Growing up in poverty, basketball was Leonard Robinson's ticket coming out of William Raines High School in Jacksonville, with the teenager already standing at a powerful 6'6" and 215 pounds. But it was a little surprising that he chose small school Tennessee State for college. Yet there was actually a lot of reason behind it. William Raines was an all-black school, and Robinson had only played for black coaches. The big universities and the money they threw around didn't interest Robinson. He felt that anything he could give back athletically should be given to a black university. But why Tennessee State? Well, lucky for them, it turned out that Robinson's high school coach and Tennessee State coach Ed Martin went way back. So Martin was thrown a lob, and Len Robinson became a force from his freshman season on. Robinson was a Tiger throughout the early 70s, then a member of the college division, essentially Division II, leading the team to a third-place tournament finish with all tournament honors as a sophomore, along with a small school All-American honorable mention. Across his junior and senior seasons, the forward averaged about 25 points and 17 rebounds. And while teams may not have known about Tennessee State, they knew about Len Robinson, who would close out his college career as one of the nation's best rebounders and scorers, a two-time All-American, who was even named to the U.S. national team as a senior, and showed he was far from second-rate talent by leading them to a win over the Soviet Union. And the NBA had taken notice, as the small school star had done enough for a second-round selection in the 1974 NBA draft. Joining the Washington Bullets as a front-court player in the mid-70s meant playing time would be hard to come by, with future Hall of Famers like Elvin Hayes and Wes Unseld on the roster. But the rookie Robinson, who physically was drawing comparisons to Unseld, would impress as early as the preseason, which got him a spot in the rotation throughout the year, and also got him a nickname from teammate Dennis Duval after seeing the way Robinson ran through an opponent. And as his career progressed, Len Robinson became Truck.
He also wears a little truck around his neck on that chain.
But as a rookie, Robinson's year was spent mostly finding his footing in the league, being an on-court fill-in when their starters needed a breather. And while his rookie stats are modest, his per 36 numbers suggested just how productive of a player he could be. The Bullets were a deep team, one of the most productive in the NBA, scoring at one of the league's highest rates and playing even better defense, tying the Boston Celtics with a league-leading 60 wins, and getting a conference semifinals matchup with the Buffalo Braves. In a series that was much closer than expected, the Bullets would survive an otherworldly performance from league MVP Bob McAdoo to outlast Buffalo in 7 games, as Robinson saw very little playing time in such a neck-and-neck series. The conference finals was the battle of the best, with Washington taking on Boston, another series where the rookie Robinson would rarely see the court, but Washington's offense was just a step ahead, getting out to a 3-1 lead before wrapping up the series in 6, set to make their second NBA Finals appearance in franchise history. Taking on the Rick Barry-led Golden State Warriors, many already had Washington penciled in as their champion, But after squandering double-digit leads in games 1 and 2, Washington found themselves down 2-0. Robinson had gotten some real playing time in Game 2, so head coach Casey Jones gave him elevated minutes in Game 3, and Robinson had his best game of the playoffs, with 13 points and 4 steals. But the lineup change led to the same outcome, and with another loss 2 nights later, the favored Bullets hadn't just lost, they had been swept, with Robinson ending his rookie year with averages of about 6 points, 4 rebounds, and half an assist per game. Washington still had a championship caliber roster and was hoping to get the bad taste out of their mouth from last year, and in 1976, it was looking more and more like they had found something special in their second year forward. Seeing some early playing time at center as Unseld was slowed down by a bad knee, Robinson took advantage, and by December he had played himself into more of a 6-man role. And now, a year and a half into his career, Robinson knew it wasn't about the amount of minutes he received, it was about what he did with them. A great point producer, and one of the NBA's best glass cleaners at his size. And with Robinson even rejecting a franchise record 8 shots in a late January win over New Orleans, he was doing exactly what he was supposed to do. Fast forward to mid-March, Robinson had cracked the starting lineup, where he remained for the rest of the regular season, responding with double-doubles in his first 3 starts. But these Bullets never found their stride like last year's, going just 6-8 after Robinson became a starter, and overall finishing at 48-34. Not the same dominance as last year, but still enough for a playoff matchup with a surprising Cavs team. The Bullets took Game 1, then over the next 2, Robinson averaged 14 points, 8 rebounds, and 2.5 blocks. But with 2 straight losses, Casey Jones would make a change. Offensively, Robinson was producing, but on defense, he was struggling and had been in foul trouble all series. So he would lose his starting spot and see a major minutes cut, as he averaged less than 4 points in about 12 minutes a night over Washington's final 4. But for the second straight season, the Bullets would lose to an underdog, outlasted by the Cavaliers. And Robinson's second season ended with him averaging about 11 points, 7 rebounds, and 1.5 assists per game. When the following season started, Washington had a new leading man, bringing in Dick Motta to coach the team, and Motta would return Robinson to the starting lineup. And this time, Robinson looked like a star in the making. Washington's first 6 games saw 6 double-doubles from the third-year forward. A mid-November win over New York saw Robinson turn in a 20-20 performance. December brought his first career 30-point game, and by late January, Robinson was still going strong. This hadn't just been a fast start or good stretch. Robinson was consistently one of the NBA's best young players, yet he was no longer a Washington Bullet. Although Robinson was a starter under Motta, he could never figure out his new coach. It seemed to him that no matter what went wrong, he would get the blame, feeling as he was the only one being punished for the team's struggles. And with Unseld and Hayes, Robinson had been playing out of position at small forward. So with Washington in need of more defense and backcourt depth, they sent Robinson to the Atlanta Hawks for guard Tom Henderson. And while head coach Hubie Brown knew he was trading for a power forward, he also liked the versatility that Robinson offered on both ends of the floor. So Robinson had gone from a team who recently made the NBA Finals to one of the league's worst in Atlanta. But he would be teaming with another young star in John Drew. And Robinson got true opportunity as a Hawk, again playing for a coach who he felt respected him and receiving more than 40 minutes a night, and in turn seeing his production soar. Robinson played like one of the best players in the league over the second half of the season. After one 30-point game in his 2.5 years with the Bullets, he had 11 in his 36 games with Atlanta. And with Robinson again getting to play closer to the hoop, it seemed he was bringing down every single rebound. The young forward was finally earning the appreciation that he had wanted for so long. But he joined a Hawks team who were 17-30, and even with his addition, they won just 14 more games, missing the playoffs at 31-51, as Robinson's overall season had ended with him averaging about 19 points, 11 rebounds, and 2 assists per game. Robinson had played out his contract and was in high demand, and after the season, he would move on to another team, signing with the New Orleans Jazz. Yet he would have gladly stayed in Atlanta. He liked everything about the team and the city. But when Atlanta started negotiations with an offer that guaranteed less money than his rookie contract, Robinson felt disrespected. Plain and simple, the Hawks blew it. The Jazz hadn't been great, but they had Pete Maravich, What they didn't have was an interior presence, someone who could score well and rebound even better. They felt they addressed both those criteria with the addition of Robinson. And with Gail Goodrich returning from a season cut short by an Achilles injury, New Orleans had potential. It was still the Pistol Pete show, but it was no longer a one-man show. Over the first 3 months of the season, Robinson was scoring down low and hitting pretty consistently on a much improved mid-range jumper, as the bank was often open for Truck. In just his 5th game with his new team, he went for 37 points and 25 rebounds, which was a good depiction of what his entire season would look like. Acting as the team's very capable secondary scoring option after Maravich, Robinson's first 49 games saw him do some of the best scoring of his career and pull down any rebound in his vicinity, with the defensive glass specifically being his territory, eventually earning his first career All-Star selection. And after an up-and-down start to the year, New Orleans was hitting their stride, wrapping up their 9th straight win to bring them back above 500 in late January. But then they got the news no one wanted. A lingering knee injury would sideline Maravich indefinitely, as the guard played just 3 more games the rest of the season. New Orleans would extend their streak to 10, but their momentum and their best offensive player was gone. Robinson did his best to make up for the loss, averaging over 24 points across his final 33 games. But without Maravich, the Jazz playoff hopes had vanished. Yet Robinson would still keep them respectable, finishing the year at 39 and 43. Mostly a year to forget, but for Robinson, it had been a year to remember, leading the league in minutes played, while pulling down 15.7 rebounds per game, meaning Robinson led the league in that category as well, becoming just the 3rd forward to do so. And at about 6'6" or 6'7", he was the shortest player to earn that distinction in over 20 years. And with Robinson also finishing with the most defensive win shares in the league, it was an all-around great year, leading to a well-deserved first-team All-NBA selection in a season which saw him average about 22.5 points, 15.5 rebounds, and 2 assists per game. After Robinson's incredible season, he wanted to renegotiate his contract, something he felt that he deserved, as well as a request that didn't seem all that far-fetched. After all, the Jazz had renegotiated Maravich's contract last summer, but New Orleans told Robinson no, citing a policy to not renegotiate. And when Robinson's agent brought attention to the policy not applying to Maravich, it kicked off a lot of drama in New Orleans. And when the Jazz changed their stance on negotiations, an agreement couldn't be reached, and Robinson's agent requested a trade. It was official. Truck wanted out. So it was a messy offseason between the two parties. But Robinson still had a job to do. And come opening night, Truck was in a Jazz uniform as their most reliable and consistent player. Even though he was unhappy, he wasn't going to sulk on the court, scoring at a career-best rate, even dropping 51 in an early season game against New Jersey, while continuing to reside among the league's top rebounders. And while New Orleans had been looking for trade partners, Robinson's no-trade clause essentially gave him final say. And it wasn't about money, it was about fit and situation. So when a deal was in place to send him to Phoenix, that no-trade clause was waived. Now on his 4th team in 2 years, Robinson had developed an unfair reputation. There was his conflict with Mata in Washington, the contract disagreements in Atlanta, and now his time in New Orleans, which was reportedly never something that Robinson really enjoyed. Not only did he and Maravich not see eye to eye on the court, with Robinson feeling Maravich should give up the ball more, but the bigger issue was that Robinson never really felt he was accepted alongside Pete Maravich. And all of these things had gotten Robinson labeled as a troublemaker. Reportedly not the case at all, and something that his coach in Atlanta, Hubie Brown, would vehemently dispute. So a hefty haul had landed the Suns the tough rebounding presence they needed.
All it cost was 4 first-round draft choices. The last 2 first rounds by the Suns and 2 in the future.
One of the few things they lacked, as they already boasted a roster that could stack up to anyone, with the high-scoring wing tandem of forward Walter Davis and guard Paul Westphal, as well as talented big man Alvin Adams. The Suns were jostling for position as the playoff race heated up, sitting at 26 and 17 at the time of the trade, and Robinson was going to be the spark they needed down the stretch. His numbers took a hit, but he knew that would happen, and he also knew why he was there. And as he didn't have defenses throwing everything at him for once, He scored at the most efficient rate of his career up to that point, but this was only a 26-game sample size, as a skin infection would hospitalize him for 2 weeks and cause him to miss nearly the entire month of March. But when the regular season ended, Phoenix had totaled 50 wins for the first time in franchise history. Robinson's first postseason in 3 years began with the Portland Trail Blazers, yet he was still working his way back from all the time he missed, coming off the bench and playing limited minutes, only averaging about 5 points and 4 boards. And after splitting the first 2 games, Phoenix was able to knock off Portland, advancing to a semifinals matchup with Kansas City. By round 2, Robinson felt he was ready to retake his usual role in the starting lineup, but the Suns were getting good play from Gar Hurd, so Robinson continued coming off the bench in this series. Yet his minutes would increase, as would his production, starting off the series with back-to-back double-doubles, as the team split the first 2 games. Over the next 3, however, Robinson shot below 30%, but his rebounding proved important, and the Suns had more than enough offense to mask his struggles, taking the series in 5 and advancing to a conference finals matchup with Seattle. After a Game 1 loss, Robinson was back in the starting lineup, having his best performance of the series in Game 3, with 21 points and 8 rebounds, to lead Phoenix to their first win. But overall, Robinson's series underwhelmed. The rebounding was there, as he led the Suns in that category, but his 11 points on 42% shooting left something to be desired. And while Phoenix would go up 3-2, that was as close as they would get. Seattle wrapped up the series in 7, and Robinson wrapped up his overall season with averages of about 21 points, 11.5 rebounds, and 1.5 assists per game. Expectations in Phoenix were high going into the following season. Robinson had gotten some criticism after his postseason performance, but the Suns remained confident in him. He had gotten time to heal and had a full training camp with his new team, and all the main pieces were back. Robinson settled into a role as one of many capable players. His numbers would never again reach the heights they did in his early years, but he also would never have to play the extreme minutes he once did, and he produced great in the time he was given. He was a guy the Suns needed, their top rebounder who could clean up the glass and ignite the break, and with his soft touch from the mid-range, opening up his bull rush drives to the hoop, he would still be a top 3 scorer, and do so on a then career-high shooting percentage. And while the Suns took a bit of time to gel, by mid-December, they were rolling, holding their own in the best division in basketball, and Truck Robinson had his fingerprints all over their rise. By season's end, Phoenix had set a franchise record with 55 wins, which got them the 3 seed and a first-round matchup with Kansas City. Robinson was healthy and ready to redeem himself after last year's subpar postseason, kicking off a Game 1 win with 13 points, 14 boards, and 3 steals. But early in Game 2, Robinson sustained a knee injury, forcing him out of the game and the rest of the series, a series which Phoenix was still able to win. But he remained absent to begin their second-round series with the Lakers, a series where they desperately needed him, as LA would out-rebound Phoenix by double digits. So with their season on the line, Robinson attempted a Game 5 comeback, a comeback which lasted less than 10 minutes, in a game that LA ran away with, ending Phoenix's year, as Robinson's season had seen him average about 17.5 points, 9.5 rebounds, and 1.5 assists per game. So Phoenix had 4 guys who could give them 20 points on any given night, probably more than they needed. And something else they felt like they needed after being dominated by the Lakers was defense. So during the offseason, they shipped out Westfall and received All-NBA defender Dennis Johnson in return. Robinson's knee continued bothering him as the season neared, but with Westfall gone, Robinson had no time to take it easy, starting all 82 games and becoming more of a go-to guy in the offense, as he played much more at the 3 in a smaller lineup, putting together one of his best seasons to date. Able to up his scoring and rebounding, Robinson led the Suns in both categories, and continued to make more than half the shots he took. The undersized Robinson was still an ideal combination of efficiency and production, powering the Suns to many wins throughout the first half of the season. And when All-Star Weekend rolled around, the 7th-year forward was there in uniform, suiting up for the West squad as a member of a Suns team who were sitting atop the Western Conference with a 41-16 record. And they would keep that top spot the rest of the way, setting a new franchise win record for the 3rd straight season, with 57 victories. so the Suns should have no problem getting through the Kansas City Kings. But after 4 games, there was a big problem. The top-seeded Suns were down 3-1. Robinson had just had his best game of the series with 23 and 13, but it was in a losing effort, and it only partially masked his nightmare 26% shooting over the first 3 games. And this time he was healthy. There were no excuses. The talk was louder than ever. Maybe Robinson was just a player who disappeared come playoff time. And yes, he followed up his Game 4 with 20 rebounds in Game 5 to help keep the Suns alive. But shooting-wise, his final 3 games were much like his first 3, as he was even benched in Game 7, and the Suns' comeback attempt came up short, losing to the underdog Kings in the series decider, as Robinson's year ended with him averaging about 19 points, 9.5 rebounds, and 2.5 assists per game. 1982 was a make-or-break year for Phoenix after such a disappointing end to last season. But after the NBA draft, it looked to be a make-or-break year for Robinson as well, as Phoenix had spent their first-round selection on power forward Larry Nance. Not a huge concern now, but Phoenix wasn't bringing in Nance to be a backup. And this may have lit a fire under Robinson. He had already proved himself during his years in Phoenix, but as his regular season mileage rose, Truck only seemed to run better. His scoring was the highest and most efficient it had been since he arrived in Phoenix. It was the same case for his rebounding. And the Suns really needed this production early, with an elbow injury sidelining Davis until mid-December. So Phoenix was missing a big piece of their offense. But with Robinson and Dennis Johnson leading the way, they would stay competitive by going 13 and 10 in that period. Yet even when Davis did return, he played limited minutes in a smaller role. So Phoenix had to play differently, slowing down the pace this season, which wasn't all that bad for the now 30-year-old Robinson, giving him plenty of opportunity to set up under the hoop or pop open for a mid-range J. Truck Robinson was having another all-star caliber season, but coaches thought otherwise. Nonetheless, he was still the one to lead his team to the finish line on some nights. And while Phoenix wasn't going to challenge for a new franchise win record, they were winning enough, as a 46 and 36 record got them another playoff appearance and a matchup with Denver. Robinson had a lot of pressure to perform, and with a 6 of 18 shooting performance in Game 1, it looked like the pressure was again getting to him. But he shot better in Game 2, and then in the series-deciding Game 3, Robinson went for 23 points, hitting 11 of his 17 shots from the field. Truck came through, and Phoenix took the series. Now the Suns had to get past the mighty Lakers, and you couldn't have asked for much better from Robinson in Game 1, finishing with 18 points and 14 rebounds, while missing just 3 of his 11 shots. Except the Lakers won by nearly 20, so that wasn't a good sign. Robinson was an efficient offensive player throughout the rest of the series, but a stomach issue limited his minutes in Game 2. And then after 4 points in Game 4, Robinson was benched, the second straight season that he would be pulled from an elimination game. And he wasn't happy, but it wouldn't have mattered who was out there, with the Lakers sweeping the Suns easily, and Robinson ending his year with averages of about 19 points, 9.5 rebounds, and 2.5 assists per game. So it had been roughly 3.5 years since Phoenix acquired Robinson, and he had rewarded them as one of their most consistent and durable players in the franchise's young history. And while he had been a key member in one of the best periods of Suns basketball, Phoenix had nothing to show for it. And after this year's benching, Robinson had effectively told the franchise he was done with them. But now Phoenix had a younger, taller, and more athletic forward waiting in the wings. So moving on from Robinson was a feasible option for the Suns. In early July, Robinson waived his no-trade clause to be sent to the New York Knicks. Robinson's best years were behind him, but he was never a player who had to rely on athleticism to be effective, and he was still coming off of one of the best seasons of his career. Now reunited with Hubie Brown, his brief coach in Atlanta, who was happy to be coaching Robinson again. However, Robinson wasn't the only big acquisition for New York, as they had also brought in a high-scoring forward named Bernard King, both joining forces with former All-Star big man Bill Cartwright. Robinson's tough work on the glass proved valuable, leading the team in rebounding, and his ability to extend his range could open a lot of possibilities on the offensive end. Except for his once automatic mid-range shot seemed to have disappeared. Robinson already had an arthritic index finger on his shooting hand, bothering him since he arrived in Phoenix. and with a thumb fracture on the same hand this season, his shot had suffered immensely, effectively eliminating an entire dimension of his game. Defenses could play him differently, and with tendonitis in his knee, he couldn't explode the same way he once did. Robinson was looking like a shell of his former self, and fans weren't happy. Luckily, the Knicks didn't rely on offense to win games, instead boasting the league's stingiest defense. And New York would recover from an 0-7 start to finish the season at 44-38. Not incredible, but enough for a playoff berth and a first-round matchup with New Jersey. Robinson and his poor playoff performer label had followed him to New York, but come the 83 postseason, he was doing his best to shed that, putting up 22 points and 13 rebounds in Game 2, with the Knicks finishing off the Nets in a sweep. Round 2 brought Philly, a championship favorite, and Robinson had no quit in this David versus Goliath matchup, shooting 51% for the series and leading the Knicks in rebounding. And after a modest Game 1, he would turn in 3 straight double-doubles.
Well, Truck did not have the greatest of reputations in playoffs when he was with the Phoenix Suns, and he has helped that reputation considerably in this series.
And the Knicks put up a fight. Games were closer than expected. However, they all had the same outcome. And after 4, Philadelphia had swept New York, as Robinson's year ended with him averaging about 9.5 points, 8 rebounds, and 2 assists per game. Robinson would show slightly improved play in 84. His shot was falling a little more often, and the rebounds were there just as they had always been. But he had been pushed further down in the game plan, with Bernard King turning into a full-blown superstar this season. But King's incredible scoring was enough to lead the Knicks to 47 wins and another playoff berth. But by their first-round series versus Detroit, Truck Robinson had a new, less flattering nickname given to him by New York fans. And he didn't feel like he could redeem himself on the court, as he wasn't getting any shots, saying that Hubie Brown told him what he wanted him to do, and none of it involved scoring the ball, with Robinson mostly out there to rebound and play defense, having to rely on putbacks to get the few points he did. In New York's 5-game series win over the Pistons, by their second-round series with Boston, it was no secret to anyone that Robinson would be seldom used on offense.
Truck Robinson has been struggling offensively, not happy, and I guess his days may be numbered here in New York. So he and Hubie, I guess, don't see eye to eye.
He feels he's not part of the Knick offense. In fact, Larry Bird even mentioned that yesterday at practice, that even the Celtics feel that Hubie does not want Truck to get involved. So
he was getting high percentage looks off rebounds and making them count, but other than that, the ball rarely came his way. However, the Knicks pushed the Celtics to 7 games. And in that Game 7, Robinson went for 16 points and attempted 13 shots. But the outcome was all but decided by halftime. Boston took the game and the series. And Robinson's year ended with averages of about 11 points, 8.5 rebounds, and 1.5 assists per game. Truck was back for the 85 season, but his role in the offense was basically non-existent. Then in just his second game of the year versus Houston, he fractured his foot, leaving the team to rehab and not returning for the remainder of the season, as his 2 games had seen him average about 2 points, 4.5 rebounds, and 1.5 assists per game. So now his contract was up, and Robinson was approaching his mid-30s, with a body that had been breaking down for years. And as his foot was still rendering him unable to play, the 11-year veteran's career would come to an end, leaving the game as one of the greatest rebounders of all time, and eventually sharing his knowledge to the younger generation during a 3-year stint as an assistant coach with the Sacramento Kings. Truck Robinson is one of those guys who has become almost completely lost to time, spending a lot of his career in the NBA's most forgotten decade, while competing with some of the greatest big men to ever take the court. In an era filled with all-time greats, Truck Robinson was very good, yet could hang with the best on any given night. A career that was more affected by injury than often gets mentioned, Robinson played through as much as he could, and took a beating while doing it. Unfortunately, he'll always pale in comparison to the Hall of Famers of his era, probably an unfair standard, which a lot of 1970s big men are held to. But his peers knew how good he was, and you would be hard-pressed to find a team that didn't want Truck Robinson from the mid-70s to early 80s. But that's it for today's episode on Truck Robinson. Hope you enjoyed it, and make sure to subscribe for more videos like this one. If you liked it, check out this one on one of his Washington Bullets teammates, or this one on a player he teamed with in New Orleans. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.